We are roaming free over Tehran, the city, Tehran, as opposed to Iran. And as you know, today we were going to have the privilege of shooting down a very big electric generation plant, one of the biggest in the world. The United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
The targeting coordinates were already loaded, not into one weapon system, into dozens of them distributed across every Arleigh Burke-class destroyer in the formation, and every strike aircraft cycling through readiness checks on the flight deck of USS Abraham Lincoln. The targets were not military installations or hardened defense sites. They were power generation facilities, fuel storage terminals, and desalination plants strung along the Iranian coastline, the infrastructure that kept the country's grid energized and its population supplied with drinkable water. The message transmitted through back-channel diplomatic contacts was precise and unambiguous. Open the Strait of Hormuz to unrestricted commercial and military transit, or every one of those facilities goes offline permanently. The United States had moved past the phase of signaling. This was the ultimatum phase. This is what maximum pressure looks like when it is applied with targeting data instead of words. On the flight deck of CVN-72, the morning launch cycle was already underway. F-35C Lightning IIs were being towed from their spotted positions into the catapult track lanes. Each aircraft carried a mixed loadout for the current mission profile. 2 GBU, 32 Joint Direct Attack munitions in the internal weapons bays for precision strikes against hardened surface infrastructure, 2 AIM-120D Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air missiles for self-defense against intercept, and the full sensor suite active, AN/APG-81 AESA radar in air-to-ground mapping mode, distributed aperture system feeding 360-degree situational awareness to the pilot's helmet-mounted display. The electro-optical targeting system beneath the nose was locked onto designated aim points transmitted from the carrier's combat direction center via encrypted Link 16 data link. The pilots had already reviewed their target packages in the ready room. Strike coordinates, ingress altitudes, egress routes, seed corridor timing, everything had been briefed. The jets were now being built toward the catapult. Red Jersey Ordnance crews conducted final weapons checks at each aircraft station. GBU-32 tailfin actuators were cycled through their full deflection range to verify guidance control authority. GPS antenna connections on each JDAM tail kit were confirmed seated and locked. Arming wire continuity was tested from the aircraft's stores management system through the fuse to the ground. Safety pins, red flagged, serialized, logged on the Ordnance Load Crew's documentation sheet, remained inserted until the aircraft reached the catapult hold short line, not 1 second before. Simultaneously, on USS Cole positioned at the western approach to the Strait of Hormuz, the weapons officer completed the final mission data upload to the BGM-109 Tomahawk Block 4 missiles seated in the Mark 41 vertical launch system cells on the destroyer's foredeck and amidships. Each Tomahawk's onboard mission computer now held a complete flight profile, launch azimuth, terrain following waypoints derived from DTED digital terrain elevation data, a terminal approach corridor calibrated to the target's specific coordinates, and a DSMAC terminal guidance image of the aim point. A photograph of the target facility taken from satellite imagery and compressed into the missile's guidance processor. Range to the furthest designated target, 840 nautical miles, well within the Block 4's operational envelope. The Mark 41 cells were pressurized. Launch sequencing was confirmed. The covers remained closed. The order had not yet come. On USS Mason, positioned on the formation's eastern flank, the same preparation was complete. The destroyer's combat systems officer had run a full Mark 41 system diagnostic. VLS cell pressurization, umbilical connections to each missile's guidance computer, launch sequencer continuity checks across all loaded cells. The ship's AN/SPY-1D passive electronically scanned array radar was tracking every airborne contact within 200 nautical miles, feeding the picture through Link 16 to the carrier's combat direction center. The SQS-53C hull-mounted sonar was in active mode, pinging the subsurface environment at regular intervals. No Iranian submarine had approached the formation without being tracked. Every contact in the battle space had a track number, a classification, and a fire control solution already computed and held in the weapons system queue. Below the waterline of CVN-72 in the carrier's combat direction center, the strategic targeting picture was displayed across the large large format tactical screens lining the operation's space. Iranian coastal infrastructure facilities were marked as designated aim points, color-coded by priority tier, distance from coast, and estimated hardening level. The desalination plants along the Persian Gulf coastline represented a category of target with no military hardening, no point defense, and no redundancy. Iran's largest desalination facilities processed hundreds of millions of liters of water per day for coastal population centers. They had no backup. The power generation facilities feeding the national grid were similarly categorized, large fixed installations identifiable from satellite imagery with cooling systems and transformer yards that could be rendered non-functional by precision-guided munitions without requiring penetrating warheads. The operations staff had been working the target list for 72 hours. Every facility had been assessed for strike sequencing, which targets struck in which order produced the maximum pressure effect with the minimum number of weapons expended. Transformer yards were ranked above cooling towers. Pump stations were ranked above administrative buildings. The sequencing logic was built around cascading failure. Disable the primary power input and the backup generators running the desalination pumps run dry within 48 hours. The assessment was complete. The target list was finalized. It was sitting on the strike coordinator's console, approved and waiting for a single authorization code to transition from planning document to execute order. A weapons officer on USS Cole sat at his fire control console with a cup of coffee going cold beside the keyboard. His Tomahawk fire control display showed all loaded cells in green status. Pressurized, connected, mission data current. He had checked the same status panel 4 times in the last 30 minutes. Everything read the same each time. The ship's intercom was quiet. The bridge reported course and speed unchanged. The formation was holding station at the strait entrance. Outside the destroyer's bridge windows, the horizon was flat, brown, and empty. The Strait of Hormuz was 11 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point. Every vessel transiting that water was being tracked and logged. Iranian patrol craft had retreated to their home port anchorages within the first hour of the formation's arrival. Commercial tanker traffic had stopped completely. None of them were moving freely. The blockade had been in effect for 6 hours, and the deadline attached to the ultimatum transmitted through back channels had not yet expired, but it was running out. When it did, the weapons officer would not need to make any decisions. The order would come down the chain, the authorization code would be entered, and the Mark 41 cells would fire in the sequence already loaded into the launch computer. The BGM-109s would clear the deck, ignite their turbofan engines, drop to terrain following altitude, and begin the flight toward coordinates already stored in their guidance processors. On the carrier's flight deck above, the catapult would fire, and the F-35Cs would climb off the bow into the same airspace. The infrastructure of an entire nation's civilian energy and water supply had been reduced to a set of GPS coordinates and a pending authorization code. The deadline was still counting down.